Hey, it's Nate here again, and this is my first video in the filmmaking category. And today's topic is how I'm breaking into Hollywood. Now, when I say Hollywood, I just mean the film and television industry. I sort of hate saying Hollywood, but that's how people know it best. Um, and this is a pursuit that I've been on since I was a little kid. Ever since I can remember, I've been always been very into creating my own stories and characters, very imaginative, and filmmaking is sort of what I discovered along the way, uh, where I can best translate those interests and skills into. So I knew when I was a kid that this is what I wanted to do for a living. I knew that it was a very difficult career path, and I also knew that I wanted to do something else first. I loved aviation, so I went through the military first and got that life experience and challenged myself and grew as a person. So I actually didn't really start professionally pursuing this until I was 30 years old. So I left the Army after 7 years, after my commitment was filled as a pilot. I got into USC, which is one of the best film schools in the world, in their Master of Fine Arts Film and Television Production program, um, which was just, your typical apply, do the essays, do the interviews, and I got in. So I also applied to UCLA. I did get into there as well, but I chose USC because USC is like a place where George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, like they directly donate to that school. George Lucas went there. Robert Zemeckis also went there, and all the teachers there are working industry professionals who are, they're not people who are washed up. You go to school there and you're in class learning from, it's like a master's class every day. You're learning from people who have been there and are doing that in the biggest way. My mentor coming out of USC was the producer and creator of Bill and Ted and a number of other big movies. So I'm not saying that you need to get into a film school. Some people don't do film school at all. But for me personally, it made a lot of sense because, one, it was a 3-year transition period out of the military, which I needed. Also, my post 9/11 GI Bill covered most of it. So it just made sense that I would do that. And I'm glad I did. The best part was I met a lot of really great, talented people from all different backgrounds. One of my classmates had a PhD in mechanical engineering to please his parents, and then he went and pursued his love for filmmaking too. So there was just a very unique, diverse group of people that got into that program, and I'm still friends with today. But it was after school, after graduation, when you're sort of facing the big beyond and you don't know what to do, and you're like, how am I gonna, in my case, how am I gonna be a writer director and not get lost along the way? Now, Hollywood is notoriously difficult to break in. I would say out of the thousands of people that try to become writers, directors, actors in the film industry, most of them don't make it. Um, and of the few that do make it, it's constantly a struggle to sort of stay in that arena. And people come out for all different reasons. I can say for me, it's just because I feel like I have my gifts that God gave me lend to creating stories and movies and creative leadership and things like that. I just feel like I would be cheating myself if I didn't pursue this all the way. Um, and I will say that a lot of the people that don't make it are very talented people. So I say there's three things that I've learned so far that you really need to have to give this a chance. One of them is perseverance. Perseverance, meaning that like no matter how tough things get, you really can stick through it. You can find your way through the dark, and you can do it without crushing your soul or losing yourself. So perseverance is a daily practice. The next thing is demonstrated talent. Can you do the thing that you want to do? And can you, is it, there's a lot of talk out here and a lot less doing. So it's like, can you actually direct and show people, hey, look, this is examples of me directing and it doing well, without a bunch of excuses. Or I want to write. Well, can you write? Can you show me something you've written that actually stands out or that will do well in the great beyond without you having to explain yourself? Um, and then, the last thing is nepotism. Who you know. That's a very real thing. Because you can be the most talented person in the world, but if you're hiding in your room and not putting yourself out there, people will never know about you. And it's through the connections that you make and all the other creative people that you make and the money people, the business side of the film business, that will sort of pay off in weird ways and years down the road in ways that you've never imagined. It will just start paying off if you have those things and you stick through it. I will say there's a lot of diversity changes happening now in the film industry, which is great. I will also say that, and this is not speculation, this is truth. As a white, straight, heterosexual male, I am not necessarily someone that people want to hear as much from anymore. And I mean that as respectfully as I can. I mean that I'm coming in and I have to understand that there are things bigger than me at play here that I need to respect for cultural and societal changes, which you need to be aware of what the world you're entering is too. So I'm aware of that. You got to pay attention to what's going on and see how best you can support the things that the world, that society is doing. So considering all these things, when I got out of grad school, I knew that I needed to have enough free time to work on my scripts. Now, writing feature-length screenplays is a huge task. It takes a lot of energy, and when you're done writing your first draft, you're going to be writing many more drafts because that's how a really good screenplay is born. And so I knew I could write well. I'd been awarded and done well writing and directing, but writing was the thing I could do for free and really build a whole movie for free on my own. So I knew that I needed to write feature scripts. I needed to have a few of them, not just one, and they all needed to be really good. So I was like, how do I have time to pay the bills but also write? And the answer at the time was driving for Uber and Lyft. So I drove Uber and Lyft for only about a couple months maybe, and I got a call from a classmate of mine who said that he had a job offer that he couldn't take and he was going to see if I wanted to do it. And it turned out to be I was going to be driving some name director around for a location scout. Now, this was the night of my thesis film premiere, and my family was in town, we were drinking, and I got this call at the bar, luckily early enough, and realized, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity, but I need to cut this off early and get some sleep. So I did. Next morning, I went to the airport and picked up a big director. I'm not going to drop names. I'm not going to do that stuff here, but I picked up a big director. Turns out the movie he was working on was a military movie. He also went to USC. He knew that I was a veteran. And so basically one thing led to another, and they brought me on that movie as a production assistant. But I also had a lot of one-on-one time with the lead actor and the director, sort of to like give some perspective on the script, on the military stuff. And I even gave notes on how to change the military stuff to make it more realistic without changing the story. And the writer took most, if not all, of those notes. So that was like my first taste of like a really legit Hollywood movie, and how that stuff sort of goes. And what I realized is the biggest difference between a Hollywood movie and a student film is the budget. I mean, they just have a lot more money to do things with, and also the talent pool. These are people who have really proven themselves for the most part. They're just really good. The actors especially they just know what to do and how to do it. So there's a lot less sort of grinding your gears going on behind the scenes for the most part. I'm sure there's some of that, but we'll get into that. Anyway, I'm on this movie set. I'm glad to be there. And then the last part of the movie, they had a helicopter scene, which was not in the script. They decided last minute to add that, which I later wrote dialogue for the ADR, the actors doing voice recording. I gave input on that down the road, but I was surprised that this helicopter was coming, and it happened to be a variation of the helicopter one of the helicopters I used to fly in the Army. It was a Huey. And I just had this very strong feeling when this thing came in. It was like this emotional catharsis of my film and military stuff all coming together in this moment. And so I was like, I got to talk to the pilot. So I went and talked to the pilot, and he turned out to be a Marine veteran and also a film and television director who really had a lot of his stuff from back in the 90s. One thing led to another. I introduced myself, and that was about it. We finished the movie. And then he calls me or texted me a few days later and said, Nate, you want to come out and fly the Huey? Absolutely. I went out there. I flew the Huey with him. It was the first time flying a helicopter like that in many years. And I was just very grateful for that opportunity. And he says, hey, Nate, I need help. I need help with a safety pilot on a private jet that I fly for some Hollywood clientele. Would you like to help me with that? And I said, well, I'm not qualified in jets, but I do have these ratings and things like that. He goes, that's fine. He's like, I come out and help me. So I did. And then next thing you know is this led to an opportunity where I was able to work part-time as a safety pilot in various helicopters and planes, and I was able to really get back into that and preserve those skills, learning from one of the best there is. And I really got to meet a lot of really powerful and interesting people in the film industry who are successful. Now, while I was doing this job, I was writing. I had time to really write and focus on my scripts. And that's when, during that time frame, with collaborations with others, including this gentleman, and then also on my own, I developed several screenplays over the course of a few years. And I submitted them to film festivals of notoriety. So there's 1,000,001 festivals out there that want your money. I only submitted to ones that I truly felt were of notoriety, that had some punch to, like they had reputations. Like, for example, the Academy Nickel Fellowship, which is put on by the people that do the Oscars. I submitted to that and things like that. Well, it paid off because not only did those scripts place very highly in some of those, including the Academy Nickel Fellowship. There was like 5,000 entries one year, and mine was like a top 50. And then I also won a few other ones. It brought this onslaught of interest. Suddenly I was getting emails and calls from interested representatives. Now, here's the interesting thing. Sometimes when you just put yourself out there and you just go out with a strong intention, intuitive intention, I think magic happens in a way, for lack of a better phrase. And in this case, a friend who I went to school with, who was in a producing program, we worked on a few projects. He really liked me. I really liked him. We lost touch, but he still had me in the back of his mind. And he was working at an agency, and he knew a guy that was going to be a manager. And so he ended up asking me what I was working on one day, and I told him, and so he asked if he could share it. So I said sure, and so he shared some of my stuff with this manager. Next thing I know, I had my now manager was talking to me, and I just really vibed with him. Like, I just really liked his tone. I liked his style. I felt like he cared. I felt like we were on the same team. One of his he wasn't a manager yet, though. He was almost a manager. And then a manager who worked with him, he gave my stuff to him. The same week that guy got my scripts, Mandalay Pictures called him to ask about one of my projects, if he had heard about it. So people were talking about my scripts in the industry. It's a small world, and these people all know each other. And so he's sitting there going, I just got my, an assistant manager giving me this guy's stuff, and now I'm getting a call from Mandalay Pictures about this guy's stuff. Who is this guy? And so one thing led to another, and I ended up getting represented at LBI Entertainment, which is one of the top management companies in the industry, and it just you need a manager or you need an agent to play in the industry. If you do not have one, they sort of validate you and they can do your bidding for you. They can get you meetings. They can introduce you to the industry inside. It's sort of like a rite of passage. If you don't have a manager or an agent, you're just not going to be able to. Everything's considered unsolicited and you're just not in the game for the most part. There are many ways to go, but this is the way that I ended up going. Anyway, my manager, and people think when you get a manager that it's all good and you're ready to go. No, you still got to work really hard. The manager is advocating for you. The manager is giving you guidance. The manager is sort of like your a mother figure in a way. They're nurturing, they're caring for you. They're sort of helping you grow in the industry. And my manager ended up I ended up getting a lot of meetings with big studios, with executives, production companies. I did what's called the water bottle tour of Hollywood, where you go to all these great meetings with executives who've read and liked your work. And they ask you if you want like sparkling or tap water, So I went to all these great companies and studios. I met a lot of wonderful people. And so then it's that I had a few opportunities to maybe work on something or to get something going, but I was still a little bit too green and things weren't quite ready yet. But the bottom line is I made a lot of great connections, people that I know that as my career develops, I have this whole network now that I know of people that know me and that we have a good relationship. So that's one of the best things that came out of those early stages of this. I also another thing is I eventually met with a producer through my manager who ended up producing one of my projects. And so now we have a project that has top talent attached. We are out to bidders right now, interested buyers for production soon. And that whole process took years to put together. But that was something that here's a script that I wrote that I also eventually brought in co-writers on, classmates of mine, to help bring authenticity to it. But this is a project that is now being produced with real, name actors attached and this like whole thing around it. So it's just amazing to think. It's just sort of surreal. And then I have another project through a classmate of mine who started his own company. They hired me to write and develop a movie based on my experiences as a helicopter pilot in the military. And now that project has several companies attached, and I have a meeting today with an investor about that project. So these are things that came over years of patience, ups and downs, things coming together, things falling apart, sort of having to prove myself through my work, through meetings with people, through pitches. I did eventually get an agent at United Talent Agency, UTA, which is also one of the top agencies in the world. The agents are the people that are like the day-to-day businessmen getting things going right here, right now. The manager is more of like a long-term nurturing figure who really cultivates the long-term brand and image of your career and preserves like what they believe you want as an artist. So I would say if you are looking to get representation, the manager is really what happens first naturally, and then the agent comes when you start making those big deals. I'm still in the thick of all this. I'm 39 now, so this has been about 6 years after school that it's taking me to get to this point. It's not been easy. It's felt unfair at times. Sometimes your stuff's at the whim of one person, even though a whole company might be behind you. You get one person at the top that decides they don't want to do it, and it all falls apart. Sometimes you get a big actor attached who can justify the return on investment, the market value of a project, and suddenly they decide they want to take a break, or they don't want to do projects like the one you have anymore. So there's a lot of that. It's like you got to take it day by day, and you just got to stick it through. But as it stands right now, I've been at it about 6 years after grad school. So really, I didn't get started until I was like 32 years old, 33 years old. But here I am with a couple projects being developed, being put together for production with real talent attached. I have great representation at the top top places, and it just came with me driving an Uber and a Lyft, knowing that I needed free time to write. I'm still learning a lot. I still have a long way to go. I'm sure I'll look back at this video many years from now and maybe, I don't know, like things evolve. But as it stands right now, that's how I'm currently making my way into the industry to do what I love for a living. I've had to work odd jobs here and there to pay the bills along the way. I've had to swallow my ego to do some of those jobs just because I knew my priority was to stay free, to stay flexible, so that I could be available to say yes to meetings, that I could be available to have the energy to write the scripts, to do the work. That's like the priority, but you got to swallow your ego. You got to look at your peers and your peers in life and people that judge you and say, oh, what are you doing? What happened? Oh, how come you haven't made anything yet? Because they're totally clueless as to how insanely difficult this industry is and how it's not like corporate America where you can climb a ladder. It's just like this big shotgun blast of maybes that if you're lucky and you're in the right place in the right time and you have the talent, things will work out. But at the end of the day, I know that if I gave up on this, I would be deeply depressed and I would take that song all the way to my grave. And I don't want to do that. I'm going to stick it out. And, I'm determined, one, because I love it, and two, because I believe that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I've had things happen where I look back and say, this is working out in big ways. So you just need to be patient. So that's a little bit of my advice on how I've been breaking in. There are many ways to go. There are many different stories to tell. But hopefully, if some of you watching this are interested in being involved in the film industry in a creative leadership kind of role, like a producer, writer, director, as an actor, maybe this story will shed some light on your journey too. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more.